Okay.
So thank you all, everyone, for joining us for today's webinar series. Our speaker today is Sheldon Shaw. Sheldon spent 15 years working in national security before embarking on a career in analytics at SAS. In his current role at Defenda, he's the Director of Research and Response, managing teams that cover IT security, OT security, and threat hunting. Mr. Shaw is a graduate of Acadia University, where he studied in English and political science. His presentation will cover the global state of affairs in operational technology, security skill sets, and future job opportunities in the OT markets. Sheldon, the floor is yours, please.
All right, thank you for that. So yeah, we'll probably take about 20 minutes and I'll walk you through. I have two screens, so if I'm looking up, I'm not actually looking at the ceiling, but I'm just looking at my other screen. And the only other thing is I have a puppy in the room. So if you hear noises, that's the dog. So let's just jump right into it. So OT is probably not something that students are currently studying. They're probably studying the basics of network technology, IT technology, server communication, things like that, and programming skills. So I thought this would be of interest. It is a burgeoning area of work for us, as well as the security space is kind of being inundated with attacks against OT. So when we look at both the IT and the OT space from Defenda's perspective, and that's where I currently work, on the left-hand side, what we're doing for our clients we're doing threat hunting, we're doing sentinel management, we're doing playbook development. So that would be your IT SOAR capabilities. We do custom analytic development, vulnerability detection and reporting, as well as the sensor management. So the convergence, at one point, we felt that IT networks were completely separate from OT networks. And I think that was the case for a long period of time. But we're certainly seeing a convergence right now with IT assets communicating into the OT network. And I have an architecture slide coming up that may make a little bit more sense for those that are following along with the slides. The one big difference is what we're seeing right now is the ability to threat hunt. So to go in and proactively hunt for malware or indicators of compromise or just malfeasance. The OT networks just don't have a great capacity for that because they're usually more, they're a standard network that you don't want to go in and interrupt very much. You don't want to put in a bunch of collection devices. Most of the sensor technology available to OT is passive, so it'll sit in a network tap. So you don't do a lot of log collection. You're not seeing a lot of sysmon or syslog. So threat hunting is difficult. We are working on ways of recording. So PCAP is a way of doing that. It can become very enormous, the data set to go through, and it makes it hard for threat hunters to file through it. So you're essentially looking at a 30-day collection of PCAP. After that, it just becomes too difficult to handle. I'll back up. The custom analytic development is quite interesting. So with most security solutions, and it doesn't really matter, we're primarily a Microsoft shop, but you could have any sensor deployed, you could have any technology in your EDR, to protect your endpoints. But really what it comes down to is what comes out of the box. So what are all the analytical routines that you have access to, and what are they collecting on? And if you have gaps, then you have to do custom analytic development. And I think that's a burgeoning workspace as well. Very exciting. So that it also can be called attack-driven development. So you have everything that you have out of the box, and then you go and you attack systems, and then you create analytics to protect against that. So we have a team solely dedicated to that right now. When you look, and I apologize, I might have to zoom this up a little bit for you. I'll talk through them anyways. They're just pictures on a screen, but essentially most of the work that we're doing is in Microsoft Azure, so in the cloud. You have your customer environment, and here we're depicting what is typical of called an ICS or an OT environment, so industrial control system or operational technology. This also includes IoT, so the Internet of Things, so your video cameras. A lot of companies keep a separate network for all of their surveillance video cameras. All of those cameras would communicate in through either an engineering workstation, PLCs, RTUs, HMIs. These are all acronyms that are heavily used inside of the OT network. And particular to the OT network, you have this device here. It's called a historian. So it's a data historian. So it basically keeps track of all of the actions, who connected to what, when, and what were they doing, what files were moved around. And here we're depicting the OT sensor. So that's essentially a passive tap that basically collects all the data that's going across the network. In the solution that we use from Microsoft, they'll have 5 different engines that will be running and over 290 specialized analytics that could be running at any given moment. There's also a slew of other analytics, but essentially those analytics will run and create alerts. It'll also keep an inventory of all the devices on your network. So it's quite a cool technology. From there, we'll pass that data into Sentinel. And at Defenda, we use ServiceNow as well. So we go from Sentinel over to ServiceNow. Our SOC analyst will take a look at it. And then, there may be some activity where we have to VPN and do some changes to the sensor or whatnot. So the operational model. So one of the things, if you're new in this space, one of the things you want to look at is MITRE ATT&CK. If you're in security or interested in security, that's a space that you probably know quite well. There is MITRE ATT&CK for ICS, so industrial control systems. And so this is a view of the world a little bit different from the IT space. So here on this left-hand continuum over here, those would be tactics and techniques that you'd be familiar with from an IT perspective. If you've done any IT security investigations, these would be quite normal. On the right-hand side, you start to get into more ICS functions. And so this is a clickable interface on the MITRE ATT&CK website that you can go through. And at Defenda, we go through and we map out what are the detection examples that we have. So we have playbooks for hunts. We also have advanced analytics. So we write those down and compare to what's being offered. Most of your managed security providers will be doing that. So let's talk a little bit about threat actors. So this is a little bit in reverse order, but Triton, Black Energy, Stuxnet. The amazing thing about threat actors and malware is that there's 15 names for each one of these. So these are just the ones that I commonly use, but Triton could be Trisis, Black Energy could be something else. And I think Stuxnet is the only one because it's so old that actually stayed the same. But so these are threat actors and pieces of malware that were attacking industrial control systems. So Triton or Trisis actually went after the safety instrumentation systems. And so it was quite a devastating attack in Saudi Arabia. When they unpacked it, it had Cyrillic character set. That's not to say that it was a Cyrillic writer. Maybe they just inserted that character set in there to put people off on a different path. But I would say that the majority of analysts that follow Triton Trisis do comment that that Cyrillic character set certainly gave some indication on who created it. And certainly you can always look at where is the malware implanted, who's it attacking? Kind of gives you a good indicator of who developed it. So Black Energy, similarly targeted attacks on electric grids. That was one of the attacks that went from IT to OT, and it had modular development and sophisticated encryption. And they very simply would just go after remote terminal units and just flip the ones and zeros and turn off portions of the electrical grid. So quite devastating economic impact, national security, all the rest. Stuxnet, I believe there's been a few books written about it, probably one of the most famous attacks. And we're talking about a very closed ICS network that was running the Iranian centrifuge system. Basically, they had insider knowledge of what was going on, all of the technical artifacts that they needed to attack. They got a USB into the network. The USB was introduced into the network, and then all of a sudden the centrifuges started to wobble and cascading problems from there. So I didn't plan on going into a full briefing on all of these attacks, but certainly if you want to get involved in this and learn a little bit about it, Stuxnet was probably the most famous, and it's probably an interesting read. So OT skill sets. So you have to bring all of your IT security skill sets to bear. And then there are a few others that you probably want to look at. And this slide was created based on, we were working in a client space, and I was just thinking, I wonder what sort of skill sets we'd be looking for if we were going to hire more people. So I just wrote these down. These are not inclusive. It would take me a little bit more time to create, here are all the skill sets that you need, but just at that moment, ladder logic. So that's for PLC programming. So it's a diagram of, what goes where and whatnot. Wireshark is freely available. And I would say if you're in the security space, you obviously know what Wireshark is. If you're a computer engineer or a programmer, maybe you don't, but you should, take advantage of that. And it has quite a few tutorials, and it's just an amazing tool. And then learn about the OT protocol stacks. So ones that we see most commonly, Modbus and Ethernet CIP. So that's Ethernet Common Industrial Protocol. That's not to say that those were the only two that you should be looking at. There's a whole bunch more. There's Siemens S7. There's just a wide variety. But again, this slide was created, that day that I was thinking about it and what the client had. So the employment outlook is pretty hard to really drill into the OT space. We're still not seeing, flashing lights around OT in terms of job descriptions. Having said that, I did go into Glassdoor and just look at salary estimates based on jobs that mentioned OT security or ICS. And the average is 115,000 with signing bonuses, but that does not mean that that's, something that you can get right out of university. It's just to put a place mark down and say, look, this is what I was seeing. You could be a junior engineer and maybe be pulling in 75, 80. I think the top end of OT security investigators is quite high. And certainly we're seeing some people with IT security backgrounds move into OT. For the last, I think I've been in security and technology, somewhere around 25 years, definitely evidence in the gray beard here, but 35% year over year demand for information security analysts to 2031. So that's quite interesting. So, the job market is going to be hot and there is going to be a demand. And, as you craft your career and what you want to do, that's something to always be aware of, right? They're probably not the same thing for COBOL programmers. So just to round this out and save us some time for questions, I'm just looking at, what we do at Defenda. So we've broken it into three things: prepare, manage, and validate. So the preparation really starts with that governance and risk and compliance, which is quite important. And then we do Microsoft professional services. And then what's really cool is we have a virtual CISO program. So one of our VPs is a virtual CISO for a few companies, and I think that's a very good model, and it's working quite well. And it seems to be exciting and beneficial for both sides. And then the manage part. So security operations as a service, and you can see all of our services in there. Obviously, managed detection and response for OT, so right over here in the corner, and managed detection and response for IT, managed EDR, GRC governance. And then to validate, we also offer pen testing, web and mobile app testing, and then red teaming. So attacking the network, getting in, writing a report on how we got in, and whatnot. So that's a little bit more on the MDR architecture. I'm not going to dive too deep in it. This is the Microsoft view of the world. It would not change with many other companies. It would be very similar. So typically every environment will have cloud assets, will have on-premise. And how do you manage those? And you can just see all of those things that will come into play. So let's see if this builds out a little bit quicker. You'll hear, threat intelligence. I mean, I've been involved in threat intelligence for many years, and it's a very hot topic for a variety of reasons. And I think we continue to struggle with getting good threat intel into our security investigations. That's always going to be an area of concern for everyone. But that is it. And I've left a little bit of time. Hopefully I didn't talk too fast, but left a little bit of time for questions.
Thank you very much, Sheldon, for that wonderful presentation. We don't have any questions from audience. Oh, Leila has a question for you. So
Yes, I have a question. I'm wondering, based on your experience, how do you see the future of OT security?
Yeah, so I spent most of my career in IT security, so I got a chance to see that evolve quite dramatically. I think OT is going to learn a lot from the problems and the errors we did in IT. We're not seeing, widespread, adoption of OT security, and I think a lot of governments around the world have called that out, saying you have to understand, the assets that you have in that network and start to manage them. There's been a lot of bulletins that have come out as of late related to that. So I'm hoping, in the classic old person statement, I hope we do it better than we did IT. I certainly don't have that power or that role to change all of that, but I can say that the OT thought leaders out there are very interesting and really get it. And I'm pretty sure most of them grew up in the IT security space. So I'm hoping we do a really good job at it. There's always going to be attacks. There's always going to be compromises. There's no 100% solution. My desire is for us not to overmarket it. Pushing out white papers that, we have 100% coverage of all OT attacks. That's my desire. It's a very painful experience in IT to see that, where companies claim that they have, 99% coverage is even a misnomer, but not sure if I answered your question or if I just droned on about marketing there, but.
Thank you very much. I have one other question, if you have. My question is, how do you see the role of AI or machine learning? Do they matters in OT security or not? Because in IT security, both defendants and also attackers use IT and machine learning as a tool too.
Yeah, it's a tough question because I think you have to start with the basics and do those right before you get to AI and ML. I'm not discounting the capabilities of those two kind of pursuits. I've worked for companies that are leaders in AI and ML. When it comes to security, there's always going to be a hands-on keyboard moment where an analyst is going to have to make that decision. Is that an attack? I've seen really interesting models that are coming out in terms of prediction analytics and looking to the future of, this is shaping up to be an attack. All of the precursors are there. I think those are of value. There's definitely going to be more AI and ML going into the future, and definitely in OT. It is certainly a hot space, and we just have to realize that, with it comes some risks, and we can't afford to miss out on the humans in the seat.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your presentation.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Sheldon, for the wonderful presentation. And I guess that's it from our end. We don't have any more questions for you. We appreciate your time, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you so much. Take care.
All right, thanks. Bye-bye.